Welcome to the Cold Case Christianity broadcast, the only Christian case-making program hosted by a cold case homicide detective. J. Warner Wallace has been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Court TV, and Dateline. For more information about Jim's work and the case for Christianity, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. Now, here's your host, J. Warner Wallace.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast. I'm J. Warner Wallace. And today I think I'm actually wearing my crossexamine.org shirt. I'm a big fan of Frank's work, Frank Turek, and he's a good friend of mine. I'm partnering with Frank all the time on all kinds of things, including a project that I think will actually address the issues I'm going to raise in today's broadcast. So I'm wearing his shirt. I'm so glad to be part of that team, in addition to getting to work with great folks over at Stand to Reason, Greg and Brett and Alan. If you haven't checked out Stand to Reason or crossexamine.org, I would encourage you to do so. They actually have shows here right on the NRB network. Now, that being said, this week what I want to do is talk about something that I'm pretty passionate about, and I've certainly discussed in prior broadcasts, and in the 7 years we did a podcast before this broadcast even began, we've talked about this over and over again. It's the attrition rate. It's the number of young people that appear to be leaving the church during their late high school through college years, early career years. You see it over and over again. And although some would like to say, well, it really hasn't changed much in the last generation or two generations, I think to say that really ignores the data. And I don't care who's doing the surveys, if they're writing books about this or if they're just doing surveys in denominations about this, you'll see over and over again that the number of young people who leave the church during that period of time, from say late teens to 20s, is dramatic. And although some will come back, some smaller percentage, about a third, according to Lifeway, will ever come back to the church, those numbers, I think, are really hard to deny. Now, you might be able to argue, well, aren't denominations really doing these surveys? And if that's the case, maybe it's just the shrinking of denominationalism, but non-denominational Christianity may be just fine. But I think that most of us who have done this work as youth pastors or as pastors or just as parents who have got young people in this age group really have the same kind of testimony. And I ask this all over the country when I speak on weekends, and here's what I discovered, that we're all experiencing the same thing. We're seeing that our young people are struggling to believe that this is true or to hold on to what's been taught to them as young people in the church. And I think this does not need to be the case, but it does happen to be the case right now. And if we don't do something to correct it, and it's easy to correct, I honestly do, then I think we're going to see it continue. And what I've done is I've posted at coldcasechristianity.com, the website associated with this program. I've posted up, and I've reposted it recently, an article I wrote about a year and a half ago that I continue to update. It's the list of all the surveys and books that have been written on this topic with links, so you can go out and see these surveys for yourself. Because I think that what I see in Christendom is either one, a panic without any real solution about how to fix it, or a denial that we're actually having this problem. So I want to first illustrate for everybody online, which I did with this article, and it's just called, Are Young People Really Leaving the Church? Type it in at coldcasechristianity.com, and you'll see this article that I provide for you with links. You can download it as a PDF file, so you can see how bad the situation really is. And of course, I'm trying to describe this situation in its really sense of urgency that I feel about it, because I think there is a solution. And let me just chase a rabbit for a second before I begin to get into more detail about this and talk about the contrast. Think about the contrast between what Christendom experienced in the first century, second century, third century, and what we're seeing now in the 21st century. And I think what you'll see if you read the book of Acts, for example, you'll see over and over and over again that the case for Christianity made by the apostles was a very evidential case based on their eyewitness accounts, their eyewitness testimony related to the resurrection. So the claims of Christianity were not back then, well, it's so much that experiential as they were evidential. And that's a big difference. And here's why I say that. As I travel around the country, and I think I've said it on this broadcast before, I typically ask the same question of all these groups: why are you guys Christians? And what I typically hear back is the same answers over and over again. Either I was raised in the church, I've always been a Christian, my parents were Christians, something like that. Or two, I've had a strong experience of the Lord. I know that God is real because I've had an experience where it's confirmed the reality of God's existence. Or I've been transformed in some way. My life got cleaned up. I have a personal testimony that I want you to hear. Look, folks, I said this before, I'll say it again. My family is filled with mostly atheists, but I do have some Mormons in my family. 6 brothers and sisters, all raised LDS. And if I asked them why they're Mormons, they would say the exact same thing. We are calling people, and we are calling young people to a belief system called Christianity in a way in the 21st century that's very different than the way the apostles called people to Christianity in the first century. The first century was all about the evidence of these eyewitness claims related to the resurrection. In the 21st century, it's very much a matter of experience and a sense of kind of tradition and being raised in the church. It's any number of reasons that don't really measure up. And when they're tested, if you don't know why this is true, if you don't know that this is true, then stand by, because someone's going to shake your cage, and you're going to end up walking away from what you really haven't examined as evidentially as you should have. And I do think there's a way for us to help our young people if they're going to walk away. And I always say this as a youth pastor: if you want to walk away for a season in your in your early adult life, as you're chasing your own passions and just doing stupid stuff that we all do as young people, great. I have no problem with that. That's on you. We all have to struggle with that season of life. I wasn't a Christian until I was 35. So I certainly had a stupid life before that, where I did all kinds of things that were not consistent with what I have now as a Christian worldview. But if young people want to do that because they just want to chase their passion and kind of put the blinders on to the truth of the Christian worldview, fine, that's on them. If, on the other hand, they're running away from what they don't think is true, well, that's really on me as their parent, or me as their youth pastor, me as their trainer, because I've got to be able to make the case to them so clearly that they know this is true, that if they want to run away for a season, it's only because they have to deny the truth so they can have some fun, they think. Now, that can be a train wreck, but the point is they have to deny the truth in order to do that stuff. That's on them. If they don't think it's true, that's on me. So I want us as the church family to step up, both as parents, as trainers, as pastors, and be able to make the case the way the disciples did, to make it as evidentially as we can, so that young people will know that it's true, so that when the tough times come, they don't stumble, they don't shake, they don't duck and bob and weave. They stand tall in the truth because they know this can hold up to scrutiny. Now, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about a couple of strategies for doing just that, and we'll do that right after this short break.
In addition to Jim's daily blog and weekly podcasts and videos, Jim continues to write books designed to help you become a better Christian casemaker. At coldcasechristianity.com, you'll find a link to Cold Case Christianity, a homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels, and Alive, a cold case approach to the resurrection. These resources will help you defend what you believe and share it with others. Need a speaker for your next conference, retreat, training seminar, or church service? Jim travels around the country, making the case for the existence of God, the deity of Jesus, and the reliability of the Bible. He'd love to partner with you to create a powerful, transformational training experience. Just visit the Cold Case Christianity website and click the Book Me tab. You'll find everything you need to know there, including a list of Jim's speaking topics, promotional materials, Jim's speaking calendar, and a link to connect with our team so we can book your event.
Okay, now if you go back and look at one of our earlier broadcasts on this very topic, I think we entitled it 4 Ways to Strengthen Your Kids in the Faith. You'll see we started to touch a little bit on this approach that I've learned to take with young people that really seems to make a difference in how they view Christianity and how they're able to, how well they're equipped to hold on during tough times, during challenging times. Look, folks, I think I've said it before here, you and I, we get to pick our at 50, I'm over 50 now, I get to pick my friend group. I get to actually, at this point in life, I can very easily surround myself with like-minded individuals. Those people at work who think like you, those people who are in your community who think like you. Your friends are probably a lot like you. And that's something we have the privilege and the ability to do at this point in our lives. Now, young people, though, when they're at school, at a college university, they don't have the opportunity to surround themselves with like-minded people. And this is even the case in a Christian university. If you think you're going to be able to somehow insulate your kids at a Christian university that's going to agree with all of your positions, well, first of all, I would ask you this. Number one, do you know what your positions are as a Christian? Do you even know the orthodox positions of Christian? Have you studied these well enough to know what it is you're concerned about defending? You're concerned about your kids holding on to? Part of the problem I see is that most of the time, adults who have kids who are college-aged are for the first time examining what they believe and how to defend it because they are now encountering the objections that their kids are leveling at them. I mean, if we're waiting till that point as Christians to finally dig in to understand why this is true and how to make a case for this and what we believe theologically or philosophically based on our Christian worldview, if we're waiting to do that until our kids are in their early 20s, wow, that puts us behind the curve dramatically. We should be able to make a case for this while our kids are young and to bring them up, inoculating them in the truth, so that when a lie comes, when poor thinking comes, when poor reasoning is right in front of them, they'll be able to actually identify it. And if we haven't done that, then we're really behind the curve, because now they've already kind of consumed what the world is selling before we get a chance to even make a case for what we believe is true. That is part of the biggest problem. So I want to throw out to you a simple model that I teach around the country, a training model. I often say we need to stop teaching our young people. We need to start training them. And the difference, of course, between teaching and training is that teaching is just imparting knowledge, but training is all about equipping people for a challenge that's right in front of them. They see it coming. They want to get ready for that challenge. And as a result, the teaching you might do becomes training because they know a challenge is waiting. Here's the biggest problem we have in Christendom, if I'm honest with you. We don't have a sense, our young people certainly don't have a sense, that there's any concrete, tangible challenge that they're going to have to face and while they're in our midst, as part of their Christian life, that they need to train for. And you know this very well. If we don't give a test and we tell our algebra students, hey, tell you what, we're going to teach you algebra over the next 15 weeks, 20 weeks, and we're not going to offer any tests. We're just going to assume you're getting it. We're going to give everybody here an automatic A. You don't need to worry. There's no tests coming. We're just going to teach this material. How attentive do you actually think they would be? They won't be very attentive. As a matter of fact, they'll spend their time studying those classes where tests are given, because they've got to be ready for those tests. And here we are going through our lives as Christians, raising up our kids, and we're not providing any test for them. We're not providing any opportunity to be challenged. And then we wonder why they don't study, why they don't really aren't engaged in the material, why they don't see any sense of urgency about the material. Well, there's no test. So here's what I want to offer is this simple training model, a TRAIN. I'm going to go through it very briefly with you in two segments, this segment and the next segment. The first aspect of this is quite simple. We have to show people their need. And we do that by showing students how terrible they are at defending what they believe. And if I'm going to do this with theological training or with philosophical training but related to atheism, I'm going to have to start by role-playing or bringing in a real somebody who holds a different worldview theologically, or somebody who holds an atheistic worldview philosophically, to be able to show them how ill-equipped they are to defend the basic claims that oppose what they believe. And sometimes I'll be that role player, and I'll come in as either a Mormon. I've got enough experience with my Mormon family to know what they believe, or at least what the system teaches. To be honest, a lot of Mormons don't even know what their system teaches. Or I'll do it as an atheist. And certainly as 35 years as a pretty obstinate, thoughtful atheist, I can certainly slip back into those shoes as well. In either case, I'm going to show them. And I got to tell you guys something. When you do this for 90 minutes with a group of, say, 30 high school students, you'd be surprised how many of those students are ready to deconvert at the end of 90 minutes. This doesn't take much, because they aren't equipped to be able to even make a case for why what this person is saying is false and is not well thought out, and it's not even true related to what the Christian worldview teaches or the evidence for Christianity, but because they don't know how to make the case, and they've never really thought about making the case, they don't do very well. And as a result, they end up really being in a really bad place at the end of 90 minutes. So the first thing I typically do is I've got to show nobody buys a car until their car breaks down and they have a need. No one's going to go, well, hopefully we don't go to the refrigerator unless you're like me, until you're hungry. So we have to show people where they have a need and have to make them hungry for this truth, because then they're ready to actually consume the teaching we're going to offer. And that's the first step in a training process, right? is to be able to show them why they have a need and why they need to work hard to meet that need. The second thing we've got to do, and don't take a break, is we've got to raise the bar for our students. Look, young people are more than willing to raise the bar for a number of academic or athletic pursuits. And as parents, we have no problem taking our students and pushing the bar up higher and requiring more of our students, pardon me, in those areas where we think it's important for them, either academically or athletically. So let me give you an example. I've known lots of people who thought their son or daughter might be able to get a scholarship in baseball or volleyball or football, and they're willing to join club teams and travel and do all the things necessary to get their kids ready for what they hope will be a scholarship around the corner. I also know lots of folks who want their kids to take the AP test, the advanced placement test, all the honors courses. They want them to be attractive to colleges in their young adult lives. So they'll push them to tutors and do all kinds of things that are necessary to get them ready academically. And it turns out our kids can actually meet that challenge. They'll actually work that hard. If we push them that hard, they'll respond. Now, the question, of course, I ask is, why don't we do this when it comes to theological training, when it comes to discipling them as young Christians? We don't have a high bar. In fact, if you can just keep our students busy with pizza and games while we're in the big service, or we're involved in our lives, if they're just teaching, trust me, we are willing to lower the bar in youth groups all across America. I've been guilty of that myself. When I thought, I want to attract young people, and they want to goof around more than anything else, so there's going to be some dimension of goofing around in my youth group. That's okay, but I didn't raise the bar for them intellectually. And it turns out we can raise the bar. And I always offer this as an illustration of this. My own kids were very young, like 12, 10, 6 and 5, or 5 and 4, when they first started attending my high school youth group, where I was the high school pastor, because they didn't want to go in their own age groups. They wanted to hang out with Pop and Mom. Great. So they would hang out with us. Well, after doing that for 4 years, these kids who, some of them were not even close to high school age, and the others who were just entering high school age, were already well discipled, well equipped to make the case for what they believed. They were a different kind of young Christian as a result of sitting even at a young age. What I learned in that process was, if you don't think that high schoolers can raise the bar, trust me, elementary and junior hires can raise that bar. If we're simply willing to engage them passionately, and we're willing to engage them with full media. I try to have media support. I try to illustrate everything we're talking about. I try to make it visual. I try to make sure I translate these difficult concepts. I try to throw the ball in a way that young people can catch it. But I don't lower the bar and just forget about these issues. They're too hard. They're too hard to talk about. No. I want to make them visual. I want to grab your attention. I want to bring you in, but I want to give you something that's a college age level so that when you get to that college age, you're equipped. Raise the bar. First thing, test. Second, raise the bar. Take a quick short break, come back, I'll give you the final 3 or 4 dimensions in training as opposed to teaching.
Connect with Cold Case Christianity on social media. Visit the Cold Case Christianity homepage and click the social media icons on the top right toolbar. Jim is active on Facebook and Twitter, posting the best apologetics articles from over 250 Christian blogs around the country. You'll also find links to Jim's Instagram, Pinterest, and Google Plus accounts, along with the link to the Cold Case Christianity YouTube page. Stay connected with Cold Case Christianity and become a better Christian casemaker. Be sure to download the free Cold Case Christianity app from the iTunes Store and the Android Marketplace. The Cold Case Christianity app puts all the resources from coldcasechristianity.com in the palm of your hand. You can read the daily blog, listen to podcasts, and watch videos from within the application. And Jim uses the app to send direct messages to fans of Cold Case Christianity. The app will also link you to all Cold Case Christianity social media and provide you with a direct connection to J. Warner Wallace. Download the app today and become a better Christian casemaker.
Okay, let's continue along here at a pretty fast clip because we want to get as much as we can said in the 28 minutes we happen to have together this week. Now, we talked about training in terms of the TRAIN acronym. T is for testing, R is for requiring, and A is for arming. We got to arm our students with the truth. We got to arm our students with tools in their tool belt. And you would never let officers go out in the field and encounter dangerous stuff unless they are properly equipped, number one, and properly trained to use the equipment you give them. And this is really the challenge, I think, that we have for our young people. And when we equip them, we want to equip them with ideas, with truth claims, with actually support. Truth claims that are supported by the evidence. And then we want to help them to be able to navigate with these truth claims. So I'll tell you that the first thing I do when I have students, and my own students especially, is I don't shy away from the claims of the culture that are anti-Christian or there are some opposing worldview. because I really believe that those need to be addressed by us in this environment before they're addressed without us in the next environment. And that's why we want to typically do what we call inoculating rather than insulating. I do not want to keep these ideas away from my students. Instead, I want to expose them to all those ideas in their most robust form so we can take care of those issues together, and you can at least see why we believe the Christian worldview is a better, more robust description of the world around us, and we want to show why these other claims are deficient in one way or another. And when we do that now, then later on when they encounter that idea, they've already been inoculated. They've already seen the idea. They've already dealt with the idea. They already see the logical fallacy before it's presented to them in a hidden form a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And this is really inoculation theory. We're trying to inoculate our students, but inoculate them with something good, the truth, so that when they encounter the lie later, they'll be ready to do it, ready to encounter it. Now, that means we're going to have to actually be very familiar ourselves with all the material that's out there written by people who are opposing the Christian worldview. If it's cosmologists who offer a different cosmology, if it's people, ethicists who offer a different morality, whatever it may be, people who just have a number of complaints about Christianity, whatever they are, people who have alternate ideas about the reliability of Scripture. Let's encounter all of those. Let's read those, and at least we have to make sure we read them. Students aren't always going to read all those books. So we have to be able to take those ideas that are presented in those books and get them out there. And if we can get our kids to read those books, great. But if they don't, we at least need to be able to tell them about the ideas that are in those books as we're training with them on a weekly basis. So that's the next thing we're going to. And also, it's not just enough to give them these tools. We're going to have to help them learn how to navigate with those tools. And that's why I say it over and over again, one of the most important books you can buy, aside, of course, from Cold Case Christianity. No, honestly, I forget about that right now. Really, what I want to recommend to you is a great book on how to navigate with truth claims by my partner, Greg Kokel at Stand to Reason, called Tactics. And this is a great way to approach a great, and I've also written a ton about this at Cold Case Christianity in the writing section under Christian case making, where you can see the approach that I take, and it just gives you some tactics for moving with these tools you already have, the tools of knowledge you've gained from exposing, inoculating your students. Then you help them to, how do I deal with that issue in a conversation? How do I deal with that issue when I'm confronted by a teacher? Then I need some tactical training as well. Now that we've talked about the T, the R, the A, now let's talk about the I, and that's to involve your students in the battlefield of ideas. And that's the biggest, to me, this is the foundational issue. It's the I. The I in train is what turns teaching into training. And I think typically, if you're someone like me and you think, to yourself, well, gosh, imagine, for example, police officers. If police officers never could handle every call just from a telephone in the police department, do you think they'd ever have to train physically to get ready to encounter evil on the streets? No, if we could handle every dispatched call by just talking to somebody on the phone, we'd never leave the building, and we'd never train as though we have to leave the building. Well, that's the problem with the church, it seems to me. If we're not willing to leave the building and get into the battlefield of ideas, then there's no point in training. You don't need to train if you never ever plan on deploying. So that's the issue we've got to talk about here when it comes to the I. It's about deploying. It's about getting involved. It's about getting out there and getting engaged in the culture. And this is really the thing that turns teaching into training. You used to think if you were a pastor, if I really wanted to bring and I struggle with this when I was a youth pastor, how do I change this trend I'm seeing in my own youth group? How do I get my students to really take the next step? Well, do I need to study more? Is it about taking out my books and really being a better student? Or is it about taking out my calendar and scheduling a challenge for my students? It turns out you can make the biggest change in your church, the biggest change in your youth group with a calendar instead of with just studying harder. And the calendar makes all the difference in the world. What we have to do now is to calendar those events that turn teaching into training. And for me, it was always two events, one in the summer, one in the winter. Summer was always Salt Lake City, where we're going to study theology and what we believe as Christians, because we're about to share the truth with our Mormon friends who live in Utah, who really use all the same words that we use, have all the same kind of vocabulary we have, but they've changed the definition of every single word. So we have to know why we believe this about God, Jesus, salvation, heaven, because they believe something totally different. To do that kind of a trip, and as robust as that trip was, in the 5 or 6 different forms of street evangelism we're going to put our students through during those 5 or 6 days we're going to be in Salt Lake City, or in Provo, or in Manti, well, that really required our students to get ready. and they were very serious about getting ready. We do the same kind of trip, only we go to UC Berkeley in the fall, just to encounter ideas surrounding atheism and philosophy, secular philosophy, and of course doing that kind of street evangelism in UC Berkeley area also requires you to get ready. You can make the biggest change by scheduling. You don't have to be big trips like this. It can simply be that you're going to invite somebody of an opposing worldview into your youth group or into your church setting, and those students are going to they need to get ready to be able to ask good questions, to be able to be kind enough. It's about a character issue and a knowledge issue. They're going to have to get ready so when that person comes in, they don't look silly. And they don't want to look silly in front of somebody who holds a different view. They will train if you'll set the challenge. Last thing, nurturing. That's the N. Nurturing is all about making sure that you know enough as the leader of this group to be able to help your students when they get beat up, because they're going to get beat up. They're going to get beat up when they go to college. They're also going to get beat up in some of these missions trips we take them on, or some of these activities we put in front of them. And if you aren't ready to love your students through this, like a cut man who has to stop the bleeding in the corner before the fighter gets back out in the middle of the ring, you have to be a good cut man, and you have to be able to patch up these issues, know well enough how they're struggling, how you can help them through that struggle, and how you can get them ready for the next. The worst thing you could be is ill-equipped yourself and try to lead a project like this, because what you'll do is lead your kids into a dangerous area without any ability to help them navigate the difficulties. You have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to nurture your students through the experience. That's as simple as it is for you in this 28 minutes. TRAIN. Test, require, arm, involve, and nurture. Those are the 5 steps that I think turn teaching into training and will help you answer the challenge we have if we ever hope to help our kids make it through those years in which many of them will leave. So I hope that helps you to kind of think through this issue. It really comes down to how willing are we to engage the truth in a way we can communicate it to our students so they can defend it at the next stage of a dangerous young life where they're going to be bombarded by all the ideas of the world. We have to help them get ready. And by the way, I mentioned that Frank Turek here at, at crossexamine.org, we are starting college prep. Cross-Examine College Prep. We're actually going to be coming out to churches, local churches, to help do this, to help train young people for this very purpose. And you can get more information about that at crossexamine.org, where you can see that Frank and I and Mike Adams are working together to equip your students to be able to face the challenges that they inevitably will face as they go to college. We got it all done somehow in 28 minutes. It was not easy to do, but we did it. So come back here next week. We'll start it all over again, right here at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast. If you're interested in more information about this week's topic, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For a thorough investigation of the reliability of the New Testament Gospels and the case for Christianity, be sure to purchase Cold Case Christianity. A homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels. It's available wherever books are sold.